And Tyndale was burned at the stake because he had leaflets and copies of Bibles that he was translating into the New Testament in English. That's what he was burned at the stake for. Not for lying on a presidential debate. Not lying in front of Congress. Not all kinds of other things that surely might be punishable by something worse than just losing an election. But Tyndale was burned to the stake, and the story goes that while he was being burned to the stake, he said, "Lord, open the eyes of the King of England." In 1516 range is when he was burned to the stake. And almost 100 years later, the King of England authorized the legal translation of the Bible so that everyone could have it in English. A man died at the stake praying that God would change things, and he did not get to see it in his lifetime, but it happened. So sometimes when we look up and say, God, I don't understand why or what, and we might not get to see the why or what until after our lifetime. You'll say amen to that? I mean, is it possible that God could want to use your life for more than just the years you live it? Is it possible that what you're involved with in building and investing in spiritually could be worth more than just the time that you're invested with it? That's why I'm a part of a church. I expect if I die next week that this church would preach the gospel the week after. The jokes would not be as good, but the church would go on. I fully expect that Bible Baptist Church in Mount Orb, where I grew up at, is preaching the gospel today, and people are being saved because it wasn't just about one man or one family or one period of time. That if a church is faithful and the people stay faithful to the Lord, the church will not fail. It will prevail against the gates of hell. You and I may not see the end of this church, but I pray that it would go beyond our end. Amen? And so, understanding. There's problems of understanding for Christians. What we're going through, where we're at, and we say, Lord, I don't understand. And can I just give you some thoughts about that? It's not only our problem. Go to Romans chapter 1. Let me give you just a few points. It's not only the problem of a Christian not understanding God. Look at Romans chapter 1. Can I suggest to you, you don't have to understand everything about God to have faith in Him or please Him or obey Him. Understanding is not the prerequisite for salvation. Now, it does say that we know the Scriptures that make us wise unto salvation, and there is some knowledge about what Jesus did, preaching the gospel, that brings us to that point. But look at Romans chapter 1, verse number 18. Let me just read some verses to you. Verse 19. Because that which may be known of God is manifest in them, for God hath showed it unto them. Means the things that we can have an understanding of God, that they're already in us. They've been placed there, that we can know about Him. Look at verse 20. For the invisible things of Him from the creation of the world are clearly seen, being understood by the things that are made, even as eternal power and Godhead, so that they are without excuse. In other words, there's no one that will have an excuse for not accepting the Lord, because He's placed a faith in us, and there's enough understanding that we can realize who God is. Verse 21. Because that when they knew God, they glorified Him not as God, neither were, what's the word? There's that. See, when you don't understand, you can still give thanks. They weren't thankful, but became vain in their imaginations, and their foolish heart was darkened. Professing themselves to be wise, they became fools. Changed the glory of the uncorruptible God into an image made like to corruptible man, and to birds and four-footed beasts and creeping things. You wonder where the idea of gods and images of gods came from? That's out of the imagination of man. The real God did not give those imaginations. The real God is invisible, and said, Thou shalt not make unto thee any graven image, or any likeness of anything, any graven image, or any likeness of anything. This Greek mythology and so forth, those things, those are inventions of man, not of God. So verse 23, they changed the glory of the uncorruptible God into an image. Verse 24, wherefore God gave them up to uncleanness through the lust of their own hearts, to dishonor their own bodies between themselves. These verses are extra, but you know this is the 5th week of June, so you get an extra Sunday service in June, so these are appropriate. Who changed the truth of God into a lie, worshiped and served the creature more than the Creator, who's blessed forever. Amen. For this cause God gave them up unto vile affections. For even their women did change the natural use into that which is against nature. So the woman burned in their lust one toward another. Men with men working that which is unseemly, and receiving in themselves that recompense of their error which was meet. This idea of wokeness is